Today's podcast, we have Adam. Adam has rowed across the Atlantic. It took him 56 days.
Day 26, rowing from New York to the UK.
This is what I look like on day one, and this is how I'm looking now.
He's the peak in terms of mental resilience and relentlessness to actually be able to do this type of feat. We're going to go through exactly what it takes for him to do that. Also how he left his full-time job to then build an online coaching business, and now how he's actually traveling the world as an adventurer whilst building this coaching business to get himself time freedom, location freedom, financial freedom. Without further ado, let's get into the episode. But first, if you haven't, make sure you subscribe. So Adam, you made the jump from leaving your 9 to 5 to then going online, very similar in terms of what I did in 25th of February 2019. You left 2-3 years ago. Yeah. What was your job and career at the time?
So I was in operations management, working in a warehouse. I just finished university when I got that first job, and I thought, I need to get on the ladder, do what I'm supposed to do, and then ended up, long story short, doing it for 2.5 years and thinking my life's definitely destined for more than this.
Okay, so that I'm smiling because I can literally remember this exact point, because I didn't have a university degree, but I had a good job. I was making $100,000 a year, £75,000. Had a 3-bedroom house with a mortgage, a nice garden, a fucking nice Mercedes on lease on the driveway, like the thing you're supposed to have.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want this for the next 25, 30 years and just basically die. Was that kind of what you were thinking as well?
Literally exactly the same thing. I can't remember which podcast I listened to, but it was, I realized that if I looked at my boss's job and their life and what they'd achieved or the way they'd spent their years, if I imagined myself being there in 15 years, I was like, well, that's the antithesis of what I want to achieve. So clearly I'm not on the right path. And the kind of boy in me that was like, had such big aspirations in terms of adventure and getting out and seeing the world. I just knew I was going to kind of die a quiet death at 25 instead of actually living the life that I wanted to.
So you did that job for 2.5 years. One of the things I found interesting when I left was that every week was basically the same shit. Like nothing changed. I didn't really make any memories. It was just the same thing. And I got a paycheck at the end of the month. And as soon as I left, I then life became an adventure, and all these, and we'll obviously talk about all your adventures, all these opportunities of things started to happen. That one thing that's important in life is obviously money, but also like memories, which if you're stuck in a 9 to 5 is something you're definitely not going to get.
The passage of time is so fast when you don't have constantly changing stimulus, right? So if all you're doing is the same commute in the same workplace for 8 hours a day, going home again, going to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, all of a sudden, and you've had this as well, I've had the exact same thing, I'm sure, is where you blink or click your fingers and a month's gone. You're like, where has that month gone? I've not achieved anything other than putting a bit of money away. And if you extrapolate that on a long enough time horizon, you're like, well, I'm not actually living,
What first sparked the idea for you to then leave that job and then go venture into like fitness and stuff online?
The main thing, the question I asked myself was, what would the 90-year-old version of me think the correct decision is in this moment? So when when it's all said and done, on my deathbed, looking back on all the decisions I made, I was turning 25 and I thought, you've got 2 options you can choose here. Kind of, you can't continue in the same direction for the reasons we've just spoken about. You could get another job that's maybe slightly better work-life balance. You enjoy it slightly more, but the reality is you're still cowardice. There's a bit of cowardice I realized if I chose that path of like not living true to what I actually wanted to do or pursue. So then I asked myself, what is my dream job? It's a very childish question because a lot of people kind of give up on that, right, at quite a young age. But like, my dream was to be an adventurer. It was to go and do difficult challenges, things that lit my heart on fire, things I wanted to do and get paid to do it. And obviously no one in their right mind is going to pay this guy who's got no skills to, give him a TV show or go and do these adventures. So I thought, how are we going to make that a reality? And the only way to do that is document yourself. So I booked a one-way flight to the Philippines, and I realized, if this all goes tits up, I can just get another normal job. I'm literally losing nothing, But now's the chance, the time to aim for the stars and see where you land.
What year was that?
That was 2022, the end of 22.
Okay. And did you have any apprehension in terms of picking up the camera or filming yourself? Because a lot of people have a lot of fear around that initially.
Yeah. I saw another YouTuber and he spoke quite candidly about the fact that you are going to suck at talking to the camera at the start. And that gave me so much like solace because I realized I'm going to be really bad. Everything that anyone does for the first time, they suck at whenever you take on any new pursuit. So I thought it's just part of the process. I watched his first video of how bad he was at talking to the camera and then how good he is now. And I thought, well, let me just suck for a bit, keep getting up and see where you end up. So I encourage anyone to look at Charlie's first YouTube video or my first YouTube video, all the stuttering, the ums, the ahs, and over time you just improve and improve.
If anyone wants to laugh, go to my Charlie Johnson Fitness YouTube channel. Look at the ones from like 7-8 years ago. It's bad.
Yeah. But you learn, don't you? You watch yourself and you think, well, why am I saying there? You know, I can just relax, take my time and speak more clearly.
That, I think, is the unknown. So you don't know that you do something until someone either tells you and corrects you on it, or you actually take time to kind of like study yourself. Okay, like I could have improved this, I could improve this, and then you stop doing those kind of mistakes. I think that's one of the traits I see in people very successful is they are very reflective and they kind of look at like, okay, what's going well, what's not, how can I improve? And they kind of keep spinning that wheel.
Completely agree. And also the willingness to be bad at things, because, you know, you spin many plates now. You've got a podcast, you know, online coaching and many other pursuits as well, YouTube. You know, when you're doing all of those things for the first time, you're going to be bad. And you wouldn't have taken on all of these new pursuits if you didn't have the awareness that I'm going to be bad at the start, I'm going to improve, and then I'm going to be good. You know, it is that simple.
Now, I'm not going to sound like Stephen Bartlett, but I know a lot of people coming onto our podcast and who are not subscribing but still enjoying the content. If I have one small ask from you, it's please hit the subscribe button. It'll help us a lot. What I think is interesting what you said there. So I think about this a lot is that, say even think of business and fitness, because I think the two are so similar.
Yeah.
At the beginning, it's so easy to get massive improvements in your fitness and also in your business. So like for fitness, it's like adaptive response you've never trained before. For businesses, you just literally just don't know what you're doing. So it's like you can then learn really basic things and it kind of works.
Which is why gains in both of them, right?
100%. And then, but then it's also like if you want to get to like top 1% in the world at something, it's then like that little marginal difference is so much more work to understand that next level up. And a lot of it is kind of like experience and hours that people often aren't willing to put in. And then looking through your content, like you've produced a lot of content in terms of like YouTube videos, very consistent. Have you always had that kind of mindset?
I think the thing that you alluded to at the start there is that bodybuilding is a microcosm of business or life or other pursuits. And I definitely had loads of self-doubt and no self-belief kind of in my adolescent years at getting into like, even until the age of like 21, 22, I like really, you know, I never had self-belief, low confidence, didn't think that I had the power to do what I wanted in this world. I felt like, you know, the world was coming at me rather than I was projecting into it. And I think fitness or getting in shape and bodybuilding type training was the first time in my life where I realized, no, if you actually stick at something and have that delayed gratification mindset, maybe in the first year, you're not going to be where you want to be. Maybe in the second year, you're not going to be where you want to be. But on a long enough time scale, if you keep getting up, you're going to improve. And so I did that in getting the body that I wanted over the course of 4 or 5 years. And then I did it in terms of like all the adventurous pursuits that we've spoken about, getting good at talking to a camera, public speaking, things even in my 9 to 5. And now I'm kind of in that journey with business ventures as well. But it just gives you, when you stack that evidence, all of the confidence to know, yes, I'm bad at the moment, but I'm going to be on that uphill trajectory. And bodybuilding was the thing that kicked that off for me, for sure.
That's why, for me, like fitness is the foundation of everything. And I also think it's the biggest blessing I've had because it's given me confidence. And also I understood that if I'm disciplined and consistent, I can then get results. You've done a lot of hard stuff. If we talk outside of the adventuring kind of stuff, we'll come on to that. What do you think was the hardest thing you had to learn or kind of go through to get to where you're at?
Quite a deep one, but this is always my answer to this kind of question. And it was around that turning 25 period. And I'm sure in 2019 you had a similar thing where it's you concede to the fact that no one's coming to save you. Like as you're growing up and you're a kid, you're like, you know, things are going to work out. Things are going to fall in my lap. Like as long as I just keep working hard, everything will turn out. And then you kind of go through the years and the motions and you realize, no, unless I really seize life by the balls, like no one cares about whether I'm going to be successful or not. The only person that cares about that is me. And so when I turned 25, or kind of around that time period, that's when I realized it's all on you to make stuff happen. And that was kind of a switch that was flicked.
There's a quote from Ed Milet, and it's when a boy becomes a man when he realizes no one's coming to save him.
Yeah.
Which like first time I heard that, I was like, that's deep, but really makes a lot of sense because also like you have to if you get yourself in shit, you're gonna have to learn how to dig yourself out of it. And a lot of the reason, I think, I'm British, so I kind of like will choose my words kind of like lightly, but I think British culture, we like to blame rather than take accountability a lot of the time. So we want to blame the government, we want to blame each other, we want to blame whatever. Whereas I think maybe the US culture is a little bit more kind of extreme ownership, and they have more of a higher risk tolerance to kind of just trying shit and seeing what happens. And if it fails, it's like, okay, cool, we'll just go again. I think that's something I think about a lot.
100%. And I don't know if you will have experienced the same thing in coaching. We've both coached hundreds of men at this point. When I get on that first call with someone, you can see the first thing I'm looking for when I'm speaking to someone new is, are they going to pluck excuses of, no, I can't train because I've got to do this and I've got to do that, and I can't eat properly because I love this or I love that. Whereas you speak to someone else and they're like, oh yeah, no problem, I'll make the time, I'm going to make it happen, I'm training 4 times a week, I'm going to eat what you tell me to eat. It's it's a world apart of, like I said, seizing what you can control versus looking for excuses.
There's always an excuse why you shouldn't do something. There's never very rarely is an excuse why you should do it.
Yeah.
And I think that you're obviously very emotionally intelligent and very hyper aware as well. For me, like, I really pick up on people say certain words, and it really catches me sometimes. And you'll notice this when you're moving here to Dubai, that when you surround yourself with, all I speak to is like successful people, that when someone says something that's kind of like negative or like a limited belief, it really stands out more because you're not exposed to it so much.
Yeah.
And then you catch it and you're like I often reframe people and be like, yeah, you shouldn't say that about yourself. Or like reword what you just said there because you don't want to say that, because you're putting a label on yourself that you can't do X, Y, Z.
And especially when you travel a lot, like you mentioned, British culture. When I've out over the last 3 years, I've barely been in the UK, and every time I go back, you just feel that cloud of pessimism about hanging above everyone. And like you said, when you surround yourself with blue sky thinking, and then kind of the tall poppy syndrome type people, that contrast becomes so apparent.
Why do you think British culture has that very heavily ingrained?
I wouldn't want to comment. I don't know with any clarity. I think the weather must have something to do with it.
Yeah, I think it doesn't help. And I think the reason why I think the US is so kind of cavalier is it's a very new country, and it's a land of like immigrants. Everyone kind of moved there, and it's very innovative, and it's kind of very forward thinking. I think we probably have maybe become a little bit kind of rest on our laurels to some degree, which is interesting because maybe 120 years ago, whatever it was, we were the most powerful country in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
From a very small little island.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad how it's kind of flipped the other way around. Like I saw I shared on LinkedIn, one of the most sad things I think I've seen in a long time was there was a World War II veteran who's 100, and he was on like national TV and basically said like, oh, we fought in this war, and like what we fought for isn't what it is now. And it's like a real shit. I was like, fuck me, like it nearly broke me. I was like, that's really sad to see a 100-year-old fucking war veteran. So
yeah, it's horrible, isn't it? Like we could get into politics all day, I'm sure, but when you look at the state of the country versus what was fought for in the Second World War, it rips your heart apart, because it's like we're getting corrupted from the inside out as opposed to from the outside in.
That's where I think it's interesting though. Also, if you look at say like a country like Dubai that again is very new and innovative, it's almost like probably like the US was maybe 50 years ago. You then see as a British person coming here kind of like the stark difference.
Yeah.
Not to kind of go too much more into politics. If we start to talk about, say, some of the adventuring kind of stuff you've been doing, like the expeditions, what first led you to go and do that? Because that's a very different thing. That's very unusual that I don't think I know anyone else who does.
Yeah. I mean, as a kid, as most kids were, I was obsessed with Action Man, right? Okay. And then as I reached kind of pre-puberty, I was obsessed with James Bond. And I just wanted this idea of like extreme competence and being able to be thrown into any environment and just to be good at shit. I was like, that's the kind of man I want to be. And that's not the kind of man I was. So I realized, some of the skills are more trivial, some of them are more useful, but I enjoyed the process of getting better at things and then just being competent across loads of domains. So whether that's mountaineering or skydiving or scuba diving or running or bodybuilding or, or rowing across an ocean, like I just wanted to be that guy that that if you're in the shit with, you can get out of it.
How do you rope other people into these type of things?
It's few and far between. So with the ocean row, that was the most recent one. It's a very good friend of mine, Jack. We met kind of 2 or 3 years ago now, and he grew up in a kind of a similar way of like wanting to do these crazy expeditions, but no one around him wanted to join in. And so when we met each other, it was like, great, I finally found someone that's aligned in terms of doing something mental and a story for the ages. So sometimes you've got to just do it on your own, or sometimes you'll meet a friend that wants to come along for the ride.
How long was the row?
56 days at sea.
What's the distance?
3,500 miles.
How on earth do you prepare for something like that?
It was about a year in the making. And the psychological prep was just as intense as the physical prep. I was extremely scared. It's the most scared I've ever been. So the row had a 7% death rate of the people that had attempted it.
And there's no safety boat, is there?
Right, no safety boat, completely unsupported. 50% of the teams that had attempted to cross the North Atlantic in history have failed. There's been 80 attempts, 40 have been successful, and then 7% of those 80 attempts have been fatal. So, you realise that you're going to be one of those statistics, either one of the 50% unsuccessful ones or potentially a fatality, and it puts your life into context. And so, you take safety precautions very seriously, especially when you're unsupported. So we had a life raft, we had Mayday beacons and satellite phones and kind of everything you can do to support yourself. And then it was just a case of getting as mentally prepared as possible so that when you're up against it, you're not going to flap around and panic. You're just going to dig in and get the job done.
From a physical training perspective, what does that look like?
Tapered up nice and slowly, because in the end we were rowing for 12 hours a day. So there's no way you can practice by rowing for 12 hours a day, because you just won't end up doing anything else with your life. So it was about a year of training in total, and it was kind of 3 hours a week. Then it turned into an hour a day. And then in the month prior to the row, it was about an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, with a couple of marathon rows.
And is that in the water or
just entirely on a rowing machine? Okay. So I'd done a previous training row with the lads in the Bahamas a year prior, rescuing the exact boat that we ended up rowing across the Atlantic, because it was shipwrecked, and we kind of restored it in order to row it across the Atlantic. And that was a 6-day trip. So I got a taste for calm ocean rowing there, but not a taste for the roughness of the open ocean.
And then in terms of like food, I'm just fascinated by the logistics of it, for like the food and water and stuff. How does that work?
So obviously you've got,
because that's a long time.
Exactly, 2 months.
And you're burning so many calories every day.
Yeah, we were burning in the region of 8,000, and we calculated we're going to be all burning about 8,000 calories a day. 4 men on board. So we didn't intend to supplement the entire 8,000. We knew, if you lose a bit of weight, as long as you make it to the other side, you're okay. So we went on with 6,000 calories each per day for 55 days. We thought it would take about 45. So we thought, okay, let's have 55 days worth of food, and then we can ration if we need to. Obviously it took 56 in the end. So we were like right on the wire, had just started rationing. And it's all the most compact foods you can imagine. So we had 2,000 calories a day of just nut butter. So you'd literally just squeeze it into your mouth and wash it down with water. And then we had 3,000 calories a day of freeze-dry foods. So like dried chili con carne that you hydrate with water, and then some flapjacks, things like that. About 230 grams of protein a day and 6,000 calories. And all the water was desalinated ocean water, because everything we needed to survive was on that boat, no support, and there's no way you could carry enough water for the entire crossing. So we used a reverse osmosis machine in order to desalinate the ocean water, and then we could drink that and hydrate our food with that.
And then how do you sleep?
Well, it's very limited. So I'll show you a picture of the boat for the viewers. But there's 2 rowing positions and 2 sleeping positions, one on the front of the boat and one on the back. And it's in the tiny cabin. So in one of the cabins, you're literally tucked in the same way I am on this seat like this, and you just sleep in this position. And we rowed non-stop for 56 days for 3 hours on, 3 hours off. So you would row for 3 hours, then you would get in the cabin, sort yourself out, and maybe get 2.5 hours sleep before you have to row again for another 3. So I averaged about 5.5, 6 hours sleep for the duration of the crossing.
Quick introduction to the podcast. Most people watch these don't subscribe. I have one huge ask. My passion and project with this podcast is to give you as much value as possible to help you have the same success I have had. So I have one small ask. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, please subscribe now, leave us a 5-star review, and now back to the episode.
Did you use any tech when you were like Whoop bands or anything out for tracking anything?
Everything would have been redlined.
Okay.
I did.
No, I was just curious.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I perhaps should have, but we had other things to consider. Also, you don't want to worry yourself. Your recovery is 1%, not ideal. But I did a blood test 2 weeks after returning, and it was interesting. I'm going to do another one in December this year to see if I can return back to where I was. So my test before the row was like right on the upper of the natural limit, and my free test was about 2/3 of the way up. And then after the row, it was like right at the bottom of the natural limit. My cholesterol was through the roof. My liver was secreting an enzyme that it really shouldn't have been, that was indicative of liver disease, but it's also indicative of extreme high stress survival situations. So I'm hoping it was the latter. And then over time that should go away. So I'm excited to do this next blood test in about a month and a half, where hopefully everything's back where it should be.
What season of the year was it when you did it?
We did it in June.
So
June and
do you
July.
have to manage the heat of the summer then as well?
It was pretty, we didn't know what to expect either because so few people have done it. And especially this route we did from New York to the UK. So we were in the Gulf Stream, which was boiling. We were having like 35-degree days in the first couple of weeks. And then when we were like over the wreck of the Titanic, we were having like 0-degree nights or slightly sub-zero. Which meant that by the end of your 3-hour evening shift, you might be shivering and get into the sleeping bag. But then in the day, you're having to put towels over your legs to block the sun, and you're battling dehydration.
What do you think is probably the biggest thing you learned from that whole experience?
The biggest thing is that I am so much stronger than I thought I was, and everyone is so much stronger than they think they are. Because I need 8 hours sleep when I'm on land. Otherwise, cognitively, I start to decline, or you feel a bit flat. I need to be eating cleanly and regularly exercising. Whereas if you throw that all out and you're like, you have to row for 12 hours a day, you can only sleep for 5 hours a day, and you have to, you're surrounded. You can't shower often. You're stuck on a boat with 3 blokes when often you want your own space. The fact that when you have to, you can deal with all those things in a life-threatening situation makes you realize like, all the other things you worry about on land are just not worth your energy.
Well, I guess it's forcing your hand. You've got no choice at that point.
Exactly. I was so grateful for that as well, because there were about 3 or 4 times on the row where I thought to myself, I'm so glad this isn't a land-based adventure.
You can't quit.
If I could quit, I would quit right now. Yeah, because you just can't quit. The only way you quit is you call over a car. You say, sorry lads, I'm going to abandon you. I'm going to call over a cargo vessel. It'll take a day to get here. And then you jeopardize, you leave them in the shit and you jeopardize the mission. So it makes it much easier to keep going.
From a psychological standpoint, that must be very difficult. And I don't know if like any psychologist spoke to you beforehand or after, like spending with 4 people. There's 4 of you total, right?
4 total, yeah.
So spending time with 3 other guys for 56 days non-stop and not having any of your own space. You're on a tiny little boat. It's probably psychologically much more challenging than people probably realize.
100%. I think, but the most psychologically challenging thing was we capsized on day 7 and we were about 300 miles in and we knew we had 3,000 miles, right? So you extrapolate that and you think, well, if we capsize every 300 miles, this isn't going to be fun. That's going to be another, 10 capsizes. And I remember being in the boat after such a short amount of time and thinking to myself, I want this to be over now. And I've still got a month and a half. Like when you project that much of the future and that much suffering all in one go and you try and bear it, it's just unbearable. So the only way to get through it is just forget about how long it is. And I started to become comfortable when I stopped willing for it to be over. I just thought, it's going to be over when it's over. Just get through every single day.
Did you almost just try and count that down in your head, like knock the days off?
Yeah, the first 3 weeks was like, okay, we're getting closer. Like, we'll probably be done in this time. It's, you're trying to do the maths when the party's going to be, when you're going to finish. And then about 4 weeks in, I think we all resigned at different points, but we were just like, listen, just control your input metrics, just control how hard you are and how hard you're working, and don't worry about how it turns out. And that was a really freeing feeling,
I think that's only an example where you've kind of got to be, I think Layla Mosey has that saying, it's like, fuck your mood, follow the plan. It's just like, we got no fucking choice.
Yeah.
You got to just keep rowing.
Yeah. Easier said than done, right?
Yeah, 100%.
But, yeah. It was a really freeing moment though, when you when you resign to that, it's like the Fight Club quote of like losing all hope is freedom, because all of a sudden you're not trying to cling to life so much, or cling to results. You just I'm just going to do what I can do, and then what happens, like a Buddhist mentality type thing.
Within the boat, did you have like a hierarchy and someone in terms of being in charge? There's not like kind of conflict or...
Yeah, so we had two really good strategies. One was called a flash tally, which every time you flash at someone, raise your voice, or are a bit of a dick, you get a name, like a strike, a tally on your under your name, and so you're strongly incentivized not to be that guy that's winning the or losing the tally. So that helped, because instead, when you're given a first order emotion of like anger or annoyance or upset or whatever it may be, on land it's very easy because you can run away or you can fight or you can whatever, you just, you can lose your temper. Whereas on the boat you can't run away, you can't fight. Yeah, exactly. So you're like, well, we've probably got to resolve this like adults. So you process your emotion, and then you communicate like an adult, rather than like an animal. So that really helped, having that tally there. It made us all much more civil. And then the other thing was, Jack, who I mentioned earlier, was the official skipper. So there was 4 of us. So if we were voting 2 and 2, we weren't going to get anywhere. So it was a democracy. But if we were kind of split vote, then whatever Jack said went, which helped.
What would be an example of something you'd have to vote for that was contentious?
So there were times we were stuck on parachute anchor in a storm. So a parachute anchor is a huge parachute that you put into the water, and it catches drag to stop you getting blown too far in the wrong direction. If you're in extreme swell, you can't row into it, the wind's too strong. You put out the parachute anchor and you just have to stop rowing for a period of time. And so we'd have to decide when we'd look at all the weather, look at what the wind was doing. Do we want to try and row into this at 1 mile an hour and be absolutely breaking our backs, or do we want to wait a little bit longer? Decisions like that, or even as simple as, should we wash the clothes today? It's very overcast because we had to rely on solar energy. Are we going to be able to charge the batteries enough in order to wash our clothes? So you're voting and making decisions on things all the time.
What was the biggest challenge, do you think, in terms of across the whole crossing? I imagine, psychologically, if it's me, one of the things I'd be looking forward to is like, once you get over halfway, you're like, we've gone past the halfway point. It's probably a big one. Yeah. What do you think was the biggest kind of win on the way there, and then the biggest challenge?
Being so far away at the start was the hardest. Like I mentioned earlier, just daunting of, I can't bear the thought of not being able to get off for another month and a half. Your brain can't even comprehend what that would look like. It's like a prison sentence, because you know how far ahead you're going to be in this for, and you know how much suffering you're doing right now. So you think, oh my God, that's a lot of suffering every day. And then every time there was extreme weather, your morale would just go through the floor. So there were, one of the lowest moments was, it was still, we only had a week to go at this point. So we were, fairly high energy. We were like really getting there, but we were in like 3 or 4 meter swell. So about the height of this ceiling, just going kind of up and down it all day. And then that meant that anytime we weren't perfectly perpendicular to it, got a bit side on by accident, you might get like crashed on quite often. It was pretty cold as well as we were getting to this side of the Atlantic. So you're wet through inside and outside your waterproofs. And imagine that in the middle of the night. So I had the 2:30 a.m. shift to 5:30 a.m. shift. So
in the dark.
In the dark, exactly. So I would like row in the freezing cold from kind of in the late evening, and then I'd be waking up at kind of 2:15, getting ready for my 2:30 shift. I'm in this warm cabin. I have to put on my wet, salty, freezing clothes and get out into the freezing water. And it was like playing Operation, the game where you have to try and like tweeze out the thing without touching the sides, because you're concentrating so much on keeping the boat pointed the right way. You're mentally exhausted, you're freezing, you're salty, you're chafing. And it's like, when is this going to end? I thought we were nearly there. And you just never know what's around the corner.
I don't think I can even comprehend what that must be like. One thing I think would be interesting is, I presume you had no mobile phone the whole time.
Well, we did. So we had to start, thanks to Elon Musk.
Instagram Live.
Yeah. We had to be careful with it because of the solar power.
Okay.
But that's how I was able to document everything. So we used Starlink, and we'd turn the internet on. It's a satellite dish that connects directly to satellites. We turn the internet on for about 5-10 minutes a day. So I would record my reels, take my pictures, write out my captions, send it to my guy on land, and then he would then edit the videos put the captions on the photos, upload it, and then I'd get a flicker of internet for 5 minutes a day, see all the support messages, see that, the fact that momentum's building, without having to be on the internet all the time.
Do you think that helped from a morale standpoint?
100%. Yeah, I didn't know whether it would or it wouldn't, but when just random strangers are saying, I didn't want to go to the gym today, and then I realized that you guys are out there rowing non-stop, like if you can do that, I can go to the gym. And that just puts a smile on your face, doesn't it? Because you're directly impacting people's health and happiness and grit and determination from the display that you're doing.
I think, and I don't know if you agree with this, but a lot of times in life, people need to see the extreme perspective to be like, okay, well, if the rowing Atlantic in 56 days, I can just turn up to the gym at 5:30 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that hard.
Yeah, exactly. But we're all guilty of it. Like,
Yeah,
I'll come back as soon as I come back, like, I'm hard as nails for the first couple of weeks, riding on the coattails of the success and the strength. And then as soon as you get into that warm bed again and life's really convenient and easy, it's very easy to slip back into that mindset of, oh no, I'll snooze the alarm, or I'll do this instead of going to the gym.
With you returning and coming back, what was the moment like when you came back into land?
Best moment of my life.
Well, okay, was that because you'd survived?
Off the boat.
Yeah.
It was just being off the boat.
As in like standing on land?
Yeah, it was the personal space more than anything. It was, there was an element, I hate the word trauma because it's that victim mentality, right? But certainly is an element of traumatization.
That I think would
happens.
freak me out the most. Because I like quiet and like no one around me a lot of times. If I'm like stuck, like if you and me here for like 56 days, I think.
Yeah,
that's
exactly. And I was just craving just being able to be 3 meters away from people rather than right next to people constantly. So as soon as we were off that boat, you had the entire sensory overload. These were the best things of getting back on land. It was having your own personal space and not rocking around, being able to eat fresh food. So like fresh fruit or even bread, like all of these things are so much more dopamine inducing than the dried nonsense that we were consuming. Sitting on a porcelain toilet, because for 56 days we were sitting on a like sharp-edged bucket to do our business every single day, like in rolling waves. Yeah, so not ideal. So just sitting on that toilet for the first time, going for a shower, being able to I had like an hour and a half sleep after we landed at 4 a.m. and then we were up again at kind of 7 a.m. So on land. So I slept from like 5:30 till 7, and that was one of the best sleeps of my life. Just backpack behind my head on an office floor. Just everything feels better, and that's part of on a daily basis. That's part of the feeling that everyone watching this and yourself and I feel on a daily basis. Of that's why we train, especially in the morning. You do the hardest thing, and then all of a sudden life just feels better and easier. If you've done like a intense cardio workout or just a difficult bodybuilding workout, all of a sudden the rest of the day feels easier. And it's important to kind of remind yourself that everything's always relative.
I think in particular for men, it's very important because it kind of sets your frame for the day. So for me, that's why I like working out kind of early, like first things, like a decent gym at house, or can I show you afterwards?
Yeah.
And I just like working out straight away as soon as I kind of get up, like within like an hour getting up, because you feel like you're winning already, and then you get the endorphins. And then for me, like from a creative standpoint, I get a lot of ideas when I'm working out, and my brain kind of starts going, which is interesting because years beforehand, I'm like, I've got work as soon as I get up for like 3 hours. Whereas I think something I think is important for people to realize is you can kind of make your schedule to suit you as long as you still do the thing you're supposed to do, which I think is kind of interesting, digressing.
Do you think it affects your confidence as well? Your speaking confidence? Because that's something I find as well.
From working out or being in better shape? Or
working out. Well, both.
Oh,
but I
yeah,
meant in terms of working out,
so like,
because it's huge for me.
Dude, so like for me, if
think.
sometimes I train, I'm like, I want to fucking go on camera, so I just want to rip something. Because like my brain is fired up, and you think like oxygen levels are like highest in your blood. You've already got dopamine surging. I've got probably a pile of caffeine in my fucking bloodstream from pre-workouts or whatever. So I'm like, for me, I'm always highest energy after training. So if I wanted to film something that I want to be like kind of super pumped up, I would do it then. For me, the worst thing would be like filming at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of like slumping into your chair. And I think that's also where I'm trying to be very intentional with when I do certain things. Because even if you took like this is like long form content, if I was going to make short form or ads or long form, I generally try not to do them together. Because long form, short form I want to be really quick. Long form, I want to try and slow down a little bit more. So I try to be very intentional with my energy with how I do things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. It's an important skill, like you mentioned at the start of this. When you want to be in the top 1% of things, you have to optimize for those types of things. You can't make short form in the same way that you make long form, because they're just completely opposite ends of the spectrum. If you want to be a compelling podcaster, you have to have a calming demeanor and a thoughtful demeanor. Whereas if you want to go viral in 45 seconds on Instagram, it's the entire opposite.
Yeah, one's being like amped to the nines of like level 10 energy. The other one's being more calm, collective, and inquisitive. If that makes sense.
Exactly.
And I think with that, one of the most important things that I talk about a lot is people need the skill of pattern recognition. So it's like even the pattern recognition of like how you personally kind of perform. Was there anything you learned about yourself in particular from that kind of rowing experience?
Things we've touched on before, but the thing that I learned about myself is that I was most pleased about was my ability to bite my tongue in high stress situations. Because I don't know if you've ever had, not an issue with it, but like a short temper kind of through adolescence, or
not.
Just snaps at friends.
Yeah, sometimes like if I'm very emotionally stable, and I probably come a lot more like that. But maybe when I was kind of younger, I think.
Yeah, exactly the same for me.
And I think I don't know. It's because when you're younger, you react on emotion, you make a bad decision, and then you have to deal with the repercussions, and you kind of like men learn from big mistakes and doing stupid things. But I imagine in that scenario also, like you can't, if you fucking have a massive pop at someone, you've then got to deal with the person for the next 50 days. Like you kind of learn quickly that's not the way to behave.
Exactly. But yeah, I very much, when I was like 13 years old, would get into Twitter arguments, you know, and as soon as you grow up, you're like, what is the point in that? Like even hate on Instagram now, I don't even read it or reply to it. You kind of mature out of it and become emotionally stable. But the next level to that is, can you be civil and respectful at all times when you're at your limit in terms of sleep and calorie deficit and like no personal space.
Max irritability,
exactly. Couldn't have said it better. And I was really pleased that I exceeded my expectations in that.
This is obviously not anywhere near the spectrum, but for me, when I've competed in bodybuilding and you feel completely awful and you can still manage to function and you go back to normal life, you're like, this is really easy.
You know, I think it is on the same spectrum. Like people don't understand I've never prepped for a bodybuilding show, but I can only imagine, like, especially the difference in your hormones as your libido shoots down, you've got no energy, your body fat's like absolutely hanging by a thread, and your energy levels are just through the floor. It's exactly the same thing.
Because I remember the last time I competed, my body was having a meltdown. I basically couldn't even sleep because like my body just wanted food. So I'd be awake at like 2:30 a.m. just starting to work, and then be doing like 2,000 milligrams of caffeine a day to kind of function, which obviously is not a health recommendation.
2,000?
Yeah, dude. I was like hammering fucking energy drinks, and like, I think the positive with that, a bit like you with the rowing, is like when you take yourself to an extreme, you then, well, I've managed to function and perform at this level, which is completely absurd. So then when you go back to kind of like 70%, the world is like on easy mode.
No, exactly. Even like today, I would never have dreamt that. So I flew in from the UK, I slept 4 hours on a economy flight last night before this podcast. Like I would never have dreamt that I'd have the ability to speak clearly and concisely on an important podcast, like running on empty like that. But if I hadn't had the experience on the row, I wouldn't know that like that's well within my limits.
Do you think people have more resilience than they probably realize?
Yeah, 100%. And I think when you, like we spoke about the state of the UK, people kind of fall to the level of the comfort around them and the people around them. And yeah, as soon as you become comfortable and no one around you is pushing themselves, you lose that ability to find discomfort.
I think a lot of that is, like, I'm a big believer in like the law of exposure. So like once you've been exposed to something, it's like you exposed to like 56 days of rowing, like you can't unsee that or unfeel that. So like that will be etched in your memory of like, this is what fucking hard is.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is most people don't actually see what hard looks like. And I think that's why it's great that people like yourself do such like extreme kind of activities, because it shows how far you can kind of go. I don't know if you read David Goggins' books.
I haven't, obviously well aware of him.
So like, I remember reading one of his books and it was literally like, I don't know, far he was running, but like say he's like 80 miles into a race. He sat in his chair, like collapsed, like shit himself, is pissing blood down his leg. And then he just gets up and starts going again. I was like, fair play. So it's like the level at which some people are willing to continue to push themselves, like shows that there's a lot more in you than you probably realize.
Yeah. And your mind is constantly trying to protect you as well. So, you know, most people, David Goggins included, in that state, their mind will be screaming at them, no, evolutionarily, this is a really bad idea because we're absolutely redlining here. But if you can learn that where the actual limit is rather than the mental limit is, you know that you can push yourself a bit further and still be okay. I think actually in terms of evolution, this is something I've learnt recently as well, or a thought that I've had, which is, our bodies have gone through thousands, millions of years of evolution in order to get to the point where they are now. This is the first time in history that we've had access to like ability to replace our glycogen, like unlimited protein and carbohydrates and water. Previously, if you were on a 12-hour trek, you wouldn't know where the next meal was going to come from or the next water source would come from. And so our ability to recover is vastly improved, but our mental framework of where the limit should be to protect ourselves isn't. In the same way that, if you had a really bad knee injury 1,000 years ago, you're probably going to die. Whereas now you can rest for a couple of months and then you're back in the game. And so our mental framework is still very much at the mercy of our evolution, but the modern day recoverability and comforts and access to nutrition and those other things that I mentioned, I think is an important distinction, just something that kind of landed on my lap recently. What do you think about that?
I agree 100%. I also think it's interesting how we live in such a comfortable environment. We have to go out of our ways to create discomfort through things like ice baths and exercise, like whatever. Whereas I was thinking about this yesterday with Remembrance Day was kind of recently, and that thing I mentioned earlier about the war veteran. One of my granddads was a bomber pilot in World War II, and his plane nearly got shot down and got like blown to smithereens, but they managed to survive. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, that's really fucking hard, and that's really fucking difficult. I'm like, I worry about the shit I have to worry about. I'm not getting shot at by fucking Nazis flying over France and all this other type of stuff. It's like, perspective of problems we have now aren't really that my YouTube video has not done that well. Woe is me. So I think perspective is one of the quickest things I try and pull for if I'm trying to have a pity party for myself. And I think that alongside ownership of, if something has gone bad or hasn't gone the way I want, how can I take ownership of that? But I think the problem we have now is, it's interesting. We spoke a bit about the US, but if you look at, say, for example, the US has the best, say, health and fitness gyms in the world, in my opinion, and facilities, yet has the highest rate of obesity in any country in the entire planet. You have the best solution, but you also have the biggest problem. I think it's almost like an interesting paradigm of the two of those kind of match, where if you have too much comfort, it then leads you to a life you probably don't want.
Definitely. I think Dubai is another indication of that as well. People are constantly looking for how can I optimize my supplement stack, or getting the best brand new equipment instead of just focusing on the basics. Most people can improve their fitness from getting adequate sleep, eating a clean whole food diet, and resistance training, whereas instead they're worried about, should I be taking ashwagandha,
There's some of the things I think now, people worry about the 1% rather than 99%. And I think it's even though I was giving my own experience from fitness and bodybuilding stuff that I've done in the past, it's I used to be super OCD about, okay, cool. So I have to get up in the morning and I have to do my cardio, and then I have to eat, and then I have to weight train, and then I have to eat again within half an hour. And then the year I actually gained the most muscle mass, I was like, fuck all of this. Literally, I'm going to get up and train fasted, then do all my cardio after weight training, when apparently I'm going to get really skinny, but then I built more muscle than I ever did beforehand. So I was like, I think doing what works for you is more important, and actually focusing on the Pareto principle, that 20% of actions that create 80% of the outcomes is what people should focus on more, rather than what people do is they focus on the thing they're being sold rather than the thing that's actually going to get them a result, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And just your mental framework in any situation is far more important than the reality of that situation. If you operate with a mindset of, I can function and I can lift the same weights after 4 hours sleep, I can still do a PB workout and I can still go to work and get shit done. If you have that mental framework, rather than, oh no, I only had 4 hours sleep, so I can't do anything today, I have to lift lighter, and I can't go and see my friend, or whatever that looks like, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And I think, what's the word I'm looking for? Stubbornness is quite an important metric or characteristic for success in that regard, because when I was constantly traveling and trying to maintain my physique, I just refused to believe that I could get weaker. So I was like, no, I'm going to pick up the 50 kg dumbbells, even though I've not trained chest in 2 weeks, because I refused to believe that I'm going to get weaker. And sure enough, I didn't. So I think the power of your mind is underrated in a lot of cases as well.
So let's go into that. It's interesting. So like I've got a big event on Friday, and one of the things I'll talk about a lot, that is throughout my entire life, people have told me I can't do something. And my whole thing has been like, fuck you, like prove a point, I'm just gonna do it anyway. So it's like people said to me like, oh, you couldn't get in good shape, I did it. People said like, you couldn't do well in your job as a estate agent. I was managing a branch making £1 million a year at like 22. And then you can't set your own business online. I did it. I moved to Dubai. I did it. Like every single thing that someone said I couldn't do, I then did it. I think people often tell people they can't do something because they can't do it rather than you can't do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And people will often, it's that excuse mindset as well, isn't it? They see someone else doing it and they think, oh, well, it's easy for you to do because you don't have this issue that I have. So it's back into that victim mindset, isn't it?
And I know you have a similar frame with this, but one of the reasons I like Dubai so much is like, I look for proof of concept. It's like, okay, cool. So like, there's a dude up the road has like 9 supercars. I'm like, I don't know what he does, but like one of his number plates I looked up on ChatGPT is like $4 million. So I was like, okay, cool. So like, there is no shortage of money or wealth or anything in the world, no matter what anyone tells you. Like there is a massive abundance. It's just people have a lack of resourcefulness for it, and I think what I try and look for anything is like, okay, if I want to row across the Atlantic, I definitely don't want to do that. Has anyone ever done it before? Okay, cool. Like you've done it before. So like proof of concept, it can be done. Therefore, if I really wanted to do, which I don't, it sounds horrendous, then it can be done. I think that's an important thing people should try and flip.
Yeah, limiting beliefs are huge, aren't they? And surrounding yourself with people that are better than you in some domain completely eradicates that self-doubt and makes you think, no, if they can make that much money, or if they can take on that amount of suffering or do that physical pursuit, I can too, or at least I can come close to it.
You used the words there, suffering, which is interesting. Do you think the suffering you managed to put yourself through at choice and the resilience you've built has helped you with your own business and online success?
100%. And I think, obviously now I'm starting to take business a lot more seriously than I ever have before. But I think the biggest and most important factor in a successful human but also business person is just willingness to eat shit and suffer. Because everything I've ever done, whether it's building your body, preparing and executing on the row, building social media, building a business, like people from the outside will only ever see the successes, and they'll think, oh well, if he's achieved those things, it must have been easy for him. He must have there must have been no hurdles or few hurdles, and it's been this linear progression constantly upwards. Whereas when you're in the middle of it and you think, no, actually, in order to build this physique, I was actually out for 5 weeks with a back injury, or I spent a year spinning my wheels because I wasn't taking long enough rest, no, I had this issue with the business that meant I lost 50%, or I invested in something and lost 50% of my total net worth at that point in time. Giving examples here, but no one sees the back end, and I think suffering is the essence of humanity and or the human experience. And I think the more you can lean into it and accept that you're not meant to be happy all the time, life sucks and it's actually quite difficult, the more you lean into that, the happier you become and the better your life gets.
This is a deep question. Do you think people should focus on happiness?
No, I think it leads to misery. And obviously I gave you quite a quick answer on that because we've spoken about comfort and hedonism in some capacity already. But if you're just purely focusing on happiness or easy happiness, it's drugs or alcohol or meaningless pursuits, just things that are easy to acquire in order to make you feel good in a moment. But as soon as that wears off, the quality of your life just starts to fall down a slope. Whereas if you can, like you do with your training, front load that suffering, your quality of life increases as a result. Or when you're building a business, if you're willing to keep showing up and overcoming hurdles when you just keep getting faced with things that are going wrong, your quality of life is going to go up in the long run.
I think about it a lot whenever I find things hard or I struggle with something, that this is like a barrier that's stopping other people doing it. So then if I just keep going and go through it, like less people can do this, and you're slowly like just, I said about the 1%, you're filtering out everyone else who can't get there. So it's like, okay, cool. So like, this is really hard and really shit.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep going anyway because 99% of other people are going to quit.
Yeah.
But I'll just keep going and then I'll just keep beating them.
Yeah.
So,
Hormozy has a concise quote on that. Do you remember his exact verbiage?
Something similar to that, but it's basically
I really like it. I've used that before. It's like, this is this is difficult and this is where everyone else quits. And that's why you won't.
But I think that's also an important thing for people to think about, because anything that is easy has zero value, which is incredibly true with anything in life. And I also think that if you get something like easy come, easy go. So for example, if you think people who win the lottery, people who get like a crypto pump and make some money, they then also either have a paranoia that they're going to lose all the money because they don't know how to get it back, or B, they do actually lose all the money and they can't get it back.
Yeah.
So I think it's also, it's that saying, it's not the pursuit of happiness, it's the happiness of the pursuit, or whatever the expression is. Like, the more I focus on trying to be happy, the less happy I am.
Yeah. And I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, but all of the value you've built in your life would not be meaningful if it wasn't for the man you've become in the process and the lessons you've learned in the process.
And that's, I don't know if this resonates with you, but when I was younger, I thought, maybe even not even younger, like 4 or 5 years ago, I thought life experience was bullshit.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah. The older I've got, I'm like, yeah, like people know a lot. Like I've got a friend of mine who was a fitness client of mine for a while, who was like a massive investment banker. And I go for dinner with him sometimes and I just interrogate him for like wisdom for like 3 hours. And it's just fascinating because he's 20 years older than me. He's got all this life experience. And they can just say things that can reframe your thought process on the world, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, you can't shortcut the journey to success, can you? That's something I thought about on the row as well, was I want to have proved to myself that I can do this, to prove to the world that I can do this, to be on land right now, and for the suffering to be over. But like you just said, if it was easy, it wouldn't mean anything. And you can't fast track that process. You have to sit in it. You have to sit in the suffering and you have to persevere, and then you'll be rewarded if you're able to do so.
Do you ever have a bad day now and you think, well, at least I haven't got a row for another 55 days?
It's not that clinical. I wish it was. I wish I could just call on that. Or I suppose I could if I work on that reframing. But I do have a bad day now, and I have just undeniable evidence that like the far superior days are on the way. Like, yes, this is a bad day or things are going badly, but it just bounces off now. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe I feel a bit low, or I'm feeling a bit anxious, or that something's gone wrong at work, but I don't care. I know that I'm going to be successful and think I'm just going to bounce off. So having that stack of proof makes things much easier to stay emotionally regulated, for sure.
The number one trait I see in the clients we work with, the most successful, I was looking at all of this. We've helped 23 people make over 100K a month in their fitness business in the last 6 months. And all of them had the same trait of having a high level of emotional stability.
Interesting.
All of them.
I was I wanted to be a professional poker player when I was 18 years old. And again, it's a similar thing. I got pretty good at poker, but it just wasn't the right path for me at the time. But the most successful poker players are the ones that disassociate the emotional from the physical, from the game. So it's like, don't think about the chips as having a dollar value. Just think of it in terms of game theory and succeeding in the game. And it's that exact same thing. It's staying emotionally stable by disassociating and just focusing on what you need to do to be successful.
Outside of the rowing, what's been the other biggest challenges you've done, or any other ones recently?
One that was pretty formative for me and really fun and out there was hunting with the last hunter-gatherers in Africa.
What country was it in?
In Tanzania.
Okay.
So before the row, when I quit my job, I said to myself, I've saved up some money. I'm going to become an adventurer and just go to every continent.
What did your parents say at this point?
They had some faith in me. They were like, he knows what he's doing. He'll work it out. Like, because I've always been very sensible.
Okay.
So even though it sounded ludicrous, they were like, go on, have a go, see what happens. Which is nice, because it's another hurdle, isn't it, having unsupportive parents. So fortunate that I haven't had to deal with that. So I went and did Southeast Asia initially. Then I went to kind of Jordan and Egypt. And then I went and did a sub-Saharan Africa trip. And as part of that, I climbed Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, went to the Serengeti, and then hunted with the last hunter-gatherers in Africa that live on the plains of Lake Eyasi in Tanzania. And it's not something that tourists do. Often it's quite difficult to coordinate, but because I made some good connections from being in Tanzania for a month, I went out into the bush, and it was just me. It was like maybe a 4 or 5 hour drive down dirt tracks in order to get to where this tribe were. It was just me and a translator, like 5 hours away from the nearest civilization. We turn up at the edge of the bush in this Land Rover, and he just like calls in because he speaks their language. And then the tribe leader comes out. They see tourists sometimes, so they get it and they don't mind showing off. So then I spent 2 days with them, just chilled with them around the fire, learned about their way of life, just watched them and then integrated into their lives. and we went on 2 hunts together. One was a sunset hunt. They build everything themselves. So they build bow and arrows just from like wood and horsehair, and they can shoot like 25 meters away a bird this size, maybe like this size, out of a tree from 25 meters away with 100% precision every single time. It is mind blowing. And so we went on this evening hunt, and they would shoot these birds out the tree, and they probably got like 8 or so. Went round a fire and asked me to eat some. I was like, well, I'm only here once, so I had this bloody taste of bird, which was, I've had better meat before. And then the next day we went on a huge hunt, which was more than a marathon in distance. It was about 50k that we covered, and
So they're running that.
it was like a really fast walk. So if you're in pursuit of an animal, you might be jogging or you might be walking, and then sometimes they'd stop. They smoke a lot of weed as well.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what the correlation is. So we probably did like 20k, then they had a pad of puff, and then went again. And we were tracking these warthogs for most of the day. And in the pursuit of these warthogs, they caught these things called hyraxes, which are like big ferret animals like this big. And they got about 5 of those in total. But what happened was it took until about hour 4 or 5 until we actually caught anything. So I was walking with them for 2 or 3 hours, like 30 kilometers into the bush. And the thought dawned on me that, they've got these bows and poison arrows, and it's just me, a translator, and like 20 of these like fighting age men. No one really knows I'm here. Like 100 kilometers from the nearest white man. And I was like, is this all an elaborate con? To like, am I the prey here? Am I just going to get an arrow in the back at some point, and I'm the prey that they've been hunting for the whole time? Because we'd barely seen any animals. So I had the moment of like, no, like you start to doubt yourself.
Yeah, you're led down a gone path.
Exactly. We're like, where are we actually walking? But as soon as we caught that first hyrax thing, I was like, okay, no, I think this is legit. But that was incredible to see the way that they operated. They barely drink. They drink once per day. So they'll just go to a watering hole maximum once per day, sometimes every other day. They'll go to a watering hole and drink 5 or 10 liters and then just survive. So when we were
Are they all very thin, I presume?
all extremely thin, and they hunt with dogs as well, which are stick thin, so well behaved as well. And yeah, they just like eat only once a day, drink only once a day. And it makes you realize what you're capable of. Here we are having to sit halfway through a bodybuild, like between every set in a bodybuilding workout, when they're like trekking through the African plains for 6 hours and then drinking out of a puddle.
I think when you see the extremes of where some human bodies are kind of pushed, it kind of, again, puts that kind of whole perspective thing. Are there any big challenges you want to do or expeditions that you haven't done yet?
Yeah, I don't need to be suffering immensely in order to be content. So I'm quite glad that I don't have that kind of mental aspect to my mindset of I need to, like David Goggins-esque,
Most extreme thing possible.
push the limit. Yeah. So I've got some more fun things. I want to get over to Kyrgyzstan early next year and do like a motorbike trip through the mountains there and document that. Because again, it's very, via Instagram or YouTube, not many people have done it and documented it. So I want to do a nice, raw, authentic trip there. And my next big, difficult challenge is going to be on the Arabian Peninsula, kind of at the back end of 2026. So more details TBC, but something desert related and even harder than the row I'm scheming.
Have you found the success with, obviously online with the expeditions has helped in terms of growing the coaching business?
100%. And that was always the goal, because as you know, you started in 2019, right?
Yeah.
I started in 2022, end of 2022. So you've already had like waves of the fitness industry, and you can't just turn up and be like, I'm going to be a fitness influencer, because everyone tries to do that. So I set myself the task, and the project was, I'm never going to be in the best shape out of everyone in the scene, and I'm never going to be the most adventurous out of all of the adventurers, but I'm going to be the best combination of hybrid, yeah, like adventurous and in great shape simultaneously. And so that was the goal. It was always, go out and do these difficult challenges and prove to people you can use your body in a functional way, be in great shape, not necessarily be a mass monster, but be able to like carry a lot of mass and have a low body fat and be functionally fit, and do these extreme challenges as well. And that was kind of the gap in the market that I saw. It was like like Bear Grylls, Mike Thurston synergy type thing,
Hybrid, love shot.
Yeah, exactly.
I think what's interesting with that as well is that, in my opinion, from a marketing perspective, the type of man who's going to resonate with that. It's going to be more of an affluent guy anyway, which means that if you want to try and, what we generally recommend is people would focus with higher end clients. They obviously pay more, which is kind of ideal.
Yeah.
But also like what they want is a lot of, and this is what happened to me from the fitness coaching side, is a lot of the higher level guys just want to kind of be connected with me, also be kind of build a relationship.
Yeah.
Because they want to learn from you also from like a mindset perspective of like, how the fuck do you row for 56 days and not go insane?
For sure. Yeah. Do you do fitness coaching as well as coaching?
We have a fitness coaching business, but I just coach coaches now.
Okay.
But our fitness business has worked with 17,000 fitness clients. I've worked with a lot.
Yeah.
So I've worked with a lot myself. So I've learned a lot through the years and that kind of from different personalities. And that's where I found a lot of times the people will use fitness, I'm guilty of that as well, to solve other problems in their life. So they have some other mental challenge or lack of confidence or whatever, and then fitness is the thing they want to kind of use to fix it. Even I remember a guy who worked with me who was from Texas, basically had a drinking problem. So he wanted to get in great shape to stop him drinking.
Nice.
So it's like, you can trade one addiction for another addiction, if that makes sense. But a positive one.
Yeah. No, I've got a couple of clients that used to be drug users and alcohol addicts, and when you can shift that addictive personality into training, and instead of doing that on a daily basis, you're training 6 times a week. It's so much more healthy, isn't it?
Would you say you have an addictive personality?
No, I actually wouldn't. I'm very focused, and I crave kind of a level of competence, and until I reach that level of contentment in that domain, I'm not going to stop. But then as soon as I reach this predetermined threshold for myself, I'm good at then relinquishing the need to keep pushing. So a good example is in bodybuilding. I got to a natural physique that I was happy with, and I thought steroids aren't going to make me any happier because I don't want to be any bigger. And in the same way, like with the physical challenges, I'm sure it'll be the same thing. Do the row and then do this desert trek, but I won't need to constantly do things until I end up taking it too far and then having a fatality, and then the same with business as well. I intend to reach a threshold of financial success in order to build security, but then not get lost in the pursuit of finances for its own sake, because then we're back in the same position we were before we left our job in the first place.
It's funny you say that, because a client of ours, he actually said on the podcast, was that one of the most profound things for him when he started working with us is like how much money do you want to make, why, and what do you want your ideal life to look like? Yeah. Whereas most people don't actually think like that. And like my thought process has always been kind of like reverse engineer back, like what does my perfect day look like? Okay, cool. Let's make some sick podcasts. I'll do an hour or two of kind of Zoom calls and then do the other stuff I kind of like to do. There's certain things I don't like to do in business. So like I will try and engineer the business so that I don't have to do those things.
100%. Yeah. And I get a lot of, I think working with brands is a big example of that. Like since getting over 1 million followers on Instagram, it's lots of brands reaching out to you of like, can you do an integrated advert for this and that? And it's like all of a sudden you're just someone else's employee again, And so if you just constantly money grabbing, you're going to just chase things, and all of a sudden you're in a position where your day to day isn't what you wanted in the first place.
Psychologically, though, you would know this as well from, I'm sure you've turned down a lot of them, that when you say no to those things, it's often incredibly empowering because it's like an abundance mindset, and then you also end up making way more money because you're happier and more aligned with who you want to be. Yeah, definitely. And you end up having a dollar value for your unit time as well, which is a nice position because it allows you to not do things that aren't worth your time rather than being a slave to money. If a big part of our audience, as I said, we're going to be like online business owners, to kind of wrap up, what would be your best piece of advice for anyone listening? I think probably from like a mental resilience and kind of mindset perspective that you could probably instill in them. Can you go first? Okay, so the biggest thing I would say would be the 3 R's. So be relentless, be resilient, and be resourceful. So like if you can just keep fucking going all the time and just be really consistent, and then resilience just to deal with all the shit that can happen, and then be resourceful to find a way to solve the problem, and you'll get exactly what you want from life. Yeah, I think you covered all bases. I think mine would have gone down the resilience path, but you can't be successful without all 3 of those aspects. I think the thing that was the biggest switch in me was realizing that
suffering and hurdles are necessary, and they're a feature, not a bug, right, of success. And so if you're on this journey now of business success and you're not where you want to be yet, just realize that eating shit is part of the process, and you just have to keep going. And that resilience piece is, I think, what most people lack. I think a lot of people are resourceful and they know how to improve, but when shit hits the fan and you're suffering and it's difficult, then do you have the ability to keep going?
Agreed. I think that's beautifully put. We'll wrap up there. Make sure everyone goes check out, follow Adam. We'll put all the details below. If you guys took value from this, make sure you subscribe, share the podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, there'll be another video on screen right now. You can check out the next episode.